I'm at Guestwick Church in the centre of Norfolk. It's a fascinating building with lots to see. Let's start on the north side of the chancel. Behind me is the tower in a very unusual position. And if you look above me, on the tower wall, you can just see the outline of a former building. Because in fact, this tower was once a central tower, and the present church has been built to the south of it. At the base of the tower, on the western side, you can clearly see the blocked up arch that went into the original nave of the church. For this tower is Saxon. It's one of those rare examples of a central tower dating from the Saxon period. We've entered the church via the south porch, and now inside we can clearly see that it has two aisles built in the 14th century, and this rather wonderful clear story with contemporary 14th century roof structure. The font also dates from the 14th century, and each of its sides is carved with a depiction either of the patronal saint, St. Peter, the cross keys over my shoulder, or with symbols of the Passion. On this side, we can clearly see the cross, the hammer, nails, scourge, sponge, spear, and ladder, which we associate with the crucifixion of Christ. On the north wall of the chancel are three hatchments dating from the 19th century to members of the Bulwer family. In the south wall of the chancel is this piscina. It's a corner piscina with one arch facing north into the sanctuary, and on the right-hand side, a smaller traceried open which actually moves onto the sedilia, the seat for the priest at Mass. And the thing that I find fascinating about it is that it retains a lot of its original colour. This dark ochre is absolutely typical of the interior of churches in the medieval period. And if we just turn around and look westwards down the church, there's absolutely no doubt that the piers and arches that we see before us would also have originally been painted in ochre. The church has several monuments to the Bulwer family. This is Edward Bulwer, who died in 1626. You see, he has an incised effigy on this ledger stone. Whilst on the north side of the chancel is this ledger stone to his wife, Anne, similarly carved with an incised effigy. These are quite unusual in Norfolk, and these are particularly good examples. The church also has some particularly fine examples of 15th century Norwich glass fragments. It really is a jigsaw puzzle with all sorts of fragments surviving, from this hand resting on a book to a foot that has long lost its body. At the back of the church, rather hidden away, is this rather wonderful brass. It's one of 30 in Norfolk that commemorate priests, and each one shows the inscription and a chalice. Although today the church is mainly glazed in plain glass, at the west end of the north aisle is this remarkable millennium window, designed and made by local resident Adam O'Grady. It really does add a splash of colour to otherwise a very simple church. I'm now standing in the north aisle, And behind me, the blocked up wall takes the place of the original chancel arch. And you can see over my shoulder the flight of steps and the way in which the staircase is cut into the wall that would originally have led up to the rood loft, which ran across the chancel arch. And there in the far wall, you can see the remains of an opening on the south side, which shows that the rood loft went right across the church, encompassing not just the chancel arch, but the south aisle as well. And here we see the staircase that would originally have left to the rood loft on top of the rood screen. There are some very naive ledger stones in this church. This one on the left is particularly good. It says, "Here lies entombed the breathless remains," which I think is rather sweet. And at the bottom, the inscription goes on to say that here lie two dusty bodies. But actually, it's the ledger stone next door that I find most interesting, because first of all, they made a mistake. They didn't put Mrs. into the gap. So there she is, religious and virtuous Mrs. Anne Bendish. And then when you look at the year, you see it shows 1699, 1700. And that shows you very clearly that this is in the period before the calendar changed. We used to start the new year in March. And although we didn't formally change it until the middle of the 18th century, it was well known that we were out of step with the rest of Europe. And so monuments of this time that record anything that happened in the first 3 months of the year show both the old calendar and the new calendar. And this is a particularly good example. This is a church I come back to time and time again. It tells the story not just of a small Norfolk village, but of the story of architectural development of these medieval buildings.